would be that a couple of things. One of them is that what we just wrote is a this entire object that we just wrote is a data access object. It's a course data access object. Okay, that is exposing. I guess I need to rename this, right? So I can I should be able to just refactor this and rename it to course data access object. Okay, which is it's providing all this data access. It's encapsulated in this one class, right? And other folks who want to use it can just use it from here, right? The other thing is that typically this object would be providing also parameters that you can pass in, such as if you're updating a course, typically you're going to pass in the ID of the course that you're updating, right? And the new data for the course that you're updating, right? Okay. Same thing for create course. Typically, you'll be providing a new course object instance. You'll be providing for delete course. Probably you'll be providing just the integer of the course ID that you are removing, right? And for find course by ID, same thing. You would have a an integer course ID that you want to retrieve. And finally, for find all, typically you're not passing anything. That makes sense? So that's one of the improvements. The other improvement is that here we have two different roles. One of the roles is that we're exposing the data to the outside world. That's one role, right? And the other role is that we are accessing data to the database. So those are two separate roles, right? That should be separated, right? So the way we can separate it is that we already named this a data access object, so we already kind of decided on what the role of this particular class is, right? So ideally, what we want to do is we'll copy this and we'll put it into a course controller, right? A controller has the role, a course file in Java has the role of exposing some behaviors or some data, right, at some URL, right? So that's what the role is, right? Whereas the data access object role is to actually access the data, but they should not cross. Each one should have its own very defined role. So let's break this up a little bit. The course controller really wants to use the data access object, right? But all this exposure should not live here, right? So these exposures, all this, the data access object itself should not be a controller, right? Should not be a controller, right? It should only provide data access, right, to anybody who wants it, including a controller, right? Right? Whereas the controller should not provide data access, so it should not use any of this. Should not use any of that. Instead, it should use the data access object. What was it called? Course data access object, DAO, new course data access object. Okay, and then use it in here. What do you do with the update course? I am going to return whatever the data access object dot update course. I'm going to pass it as an argument, the ID. I'm going to update number 2 with a new course that is passed down to me as an argument. That makes sense? So now you create a nice division of labor, right? Where one of them is dedicated only exposing the data to the rest of the world, right? It doesn't know what the data is. It needs to be delegated to a dedicated data access object. Whereas the data access object doesn't really care who wants this data, right? It only knows that it can get it from the database, right? It can provide it to anybody who wants it, including a controller or an internal class that might need it and whatnot. Yes. So we'll expand on this idea next time around. Right.